Okay, you guys, all our interns are here. Yay. Okay, thank you everyone for being here on this really, really important topic. And I want to thank Congresswoman Craig for putting this together, and also something we work together on a lot of issues, particularly law enforcement and public safety issues. And I can't think of anything more important than this right now. So I want to thank Congresswoman Craig, as well as Hastings Mayor Mary Fassbender for being here and her work, Hastings Police Chief David Wilski, and all of our law enforcement heroes, some of whom are standing in the back, to put their lives on the line every day to keep us safe. They're doing some of the most dangerous and essential work out there. I also want to thank Bridget, Tom, and Cade Noring for joining us to share Devon's story. Bridget has been out there. I know many of the members of the press actually have interviewed her, know her well, and she's not been an advocate only in Minnesota. She's also been an advocate in our nation for getting things done when it comes to fentanyl. The parents that are here with us, thank you, including Michelle Hine from Fentanyl Free Communities, and law enforcement officers across Minnesota have made it very clear that tackling fentanyl is a top law enforcement priority in our state. Fentanyl is involved in 92% of all opioid deaths in our state. Think about that. Think about just maybe a decade ago when we were meeting with doctors and dentists about prescription opioids and how people were ODing on them or they were getting addicted because of them. We've actually made some improvements on that front, but now here we are with 92% of all opioid deaths fentanyl. Just last month, police in Rochester seized at least 7,000 fentanyl pills. Earlier this year, Minnesota's U.S. Attorney Andy Lugar announced that law enforcement seized over 30,000 grams of fentanyl pills when they busted a Twin Cities drug ring. That's enough fentanyl in one bus to kill everyone in Minnesota more than 2 times over. That's the danger that we're talking about with this drug. These aren't just numbers. Every one of those pills could kill a daughter, a son, a brother, a sister, a neighbor. And we know kids are particularly vulnerable. Social media increases the risk of drug use among children and teens, and according to the DEA, a third of fentanyl cases investigated over a recent 5-month period had direct ties to social media. Now, we know this has got to be a full-out effort with the detection that we need at the border, more order at the border. We know where a lot of this stuff is coming from. We also know this means law enforcement. I'm working the cases in our own communities, but you can't fix this unless you also fix what's going on social media, because that is the source of where a lot of the kids particularly are getting these drugs. That's their contact. It's not necessarily that they see a drug dealer on a street corner. They may arrange a meet to get the drug, but basically they're hearing about it or it's being advertised on social media. You think about Devin Noring, who was struggling with migraines and bought what he thought was a Percocet over Snapchat to deal with the pain. So a lot of this is kids or adults thinking they're getting one drug and then it's laced with fentanyl. Why would drug cartels do that? Well, they want to get people more addicted so they come back. Do some people die, sadly, tragically, like Devin? Yes, but then they just move on because they're not on the street corner. It used to be that was bad for business. They're invisible on the internet. They're sites that can't be tracked. That is exactly what's going on. That Percocet, which wasn't really a Percocet, was laced with fentanyl, and it killed him. He was only 19. When a Boeing plane lost a door mid-flight, nobody questioned the decision to ground a fleet of over 700 planes. We need to take the same kind of decisive action on social media's role in the fentanyl crisis, because we know that kids are dying. That's why I am working along with Congresswoman Craig, who is leading this effort in the House, to give our law enforcement officers the information and the tools they need to crack down on online fentanyl dealing. The bill we're talking about today is named for Devin Noring and Cooper Davis. Cooper Davis was a teenager from Kansas who was also tragically killed by fentanyl and that he bought over Snapchat. The Cooper Davis and Devin Noring Act requires social media companies to report illegal drug sales on their platforms to law enforcement, a critical tool for combating this deadly distribution of illegal drugs. So think about it. They don't even have a requirement to report that this stuff is being sold. It would be like on your TV stations. You could not have ads for fentanyl on your TV stations. That would not be allowed under the FCC. But on the internet, it's like the Wild West, and there's no rules in place. Yet, they have been fighting our efforts to outlaw this on the internet and make them report it to law enforcement so law enforcement can go after the cartels. There's been a minimal number of cases brought on this front by the feds and that, or local and state, and that is simply because they don't even have the information they need to go after it or to ward it off to begin with. The bill in the Senate there were 6 of us that originally co-sponsored the bill. Senators Marshall, Shaheen, Durbin, Grassley, and Senator Young of Indiana. So it was 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans. It's always been bipartisan. It went through the Judiciary Committee of the Senate with what we call a voice vote. So this was like a situation where it is headed now to the Senate floor. We have whittled away at a lot of the objectors to the bill. It's pretty embarrassing to say that you don't even want to have this reported to law enforcement. And so we are headed to the Senate floor for a vote on this bill. Congresswoman Craig is leading the charge in the House, and no one gets in the way of Angie Craig. Every pill we keep out of our children's hands represent a life saved. That's why I'll keep working with federal, state, and local leaders, law enforcement, and Minnesota families to keep fentanyl off of our social media platforms and out of our state. And I know that Congresswoman Craig will as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Angie, and then we'll hear from Bridget Noring, as well as Police Chief Wilski. Thank you very much, and thank you for the beautiful high school in Hastings for hosting us today. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Senator Klobuchar, thank you for those wonderful remarks. Chief Wilski, thank you for your leadership. And the Hastings community, thank you for your leadership. There's no community in my congressional district that has been hit harder by the opioid and fentanyl poisoning crisis we have in our country. I also want to recognize Shakopee Police Chief Jeff Tate, who's in the back here. Scott County is represented. The work that he's doing has been just extraordinary on these issues. He's on my Mental Health and Addiction Advisory Council, and also Dakota County Sheriff Joe Lico, who is doing an extraordinary job here in Dakota County to tackle these issues as well. Most importantly, though, I'd like to thank Bridget Noring and the family members who are here with us today, the Noring family, to mark the latest chapter in this fight to keep our kids safe and honor Devin's legacy. Devin Noring was an honor student right here at Hastings High School who loved playing football, making music, and skateboarding. He was adventurous and he loved his family. I'm told he was a protector to his siblings and his friends, and he would give the shirt off his back for any single one of us, whether we knew him personally or whether it was a stranger in need. I didn't know Devin. I know all of this from the many events that I've been to with his family over these last several years and from his obituary. Because on April 4th, 2020, Devin died in his sleep as a result of fentanyl poisoning. He was seeking relief from migraines and a dental issue. He bought what he thought was a Percocet, marketed by a drug dealer on Snapchat. That pill turned out to be 100% fentanyl. He was 19 years old. Sometimes we get lost in the numbers and the nonsense that comes out of Washington. I know that directly. But we have to keep in mind the true, real cost of this epidemic in our country and in our community. Devin didn't want to die. Devin was murdered. Devin had a family who loved him dearly and a full life ahead of him. To have it cut short like that is nothing less than a tragedy. And Devin's family is not alone in their heartbreak. Cooper Davis from Shawnee, Kansas was 16 when he and 3 of his friends purchased what they thought was Percocet, again, on Snapchat. That pill also contained fentanyl, and Cooper died after taking only half of it. There are no easy answers to solve this issue. If there were, we wouldn't be talking about it here today, and people would not still be dying. But the reality is that this is a complex problem, and it's going to take an all-of-community support and bipartisanship to solve it. That's why I've been working across the aisle in the House and across this community to help do just that. Synthetic opioids are a national crisis, and we are not talking about it enough, and we are not doing enough about it as a nation. We must have more technology to detect the ingredients coming through the ports of entry at our southern border. We must prosecute the distributors who are preying upon our young children, our young people across our community. We must make sure that harm reduction tools like Narcan are more available in our community. We must continue to expand, like the good work that Bridget is doing right here in Hastings, education within each of our high schools and our junior highs, sadly, across our community. There's not one action that's going to make a difference, but together it can make a real difference. And today we're announcing the next step in that fight. A bill in the House that Senator Klobuchar, too, has been working on in the Senate, named after Devin Norring, to hold social media companies accountable for allowing drug trafficking on their social media platforms. Bridget, I cannot thank you enough for allowing me, in the introduction of this bill, to add Devin Norring's name to the bill. I appreciate you and your family so, so much. That bill will help local law enforcement counter the sale of illicit drugs. It creates civil and criminal penalties for those social platforms when they allow it. We owe this to Devin. We owe it to Cooper. We owe it to the law enforcement professionals who are working on the front line of this issue every single day. We owe it to the additional families standing up here on behalf of their loved ones. And we owe it to everyone who has a stake in this fight, and that is everyone in our community. Thank you again to Bridget and her family for your courageous leadership, and thank you so much to our Senator, Senator Amy Klobuchar, for help leading this charge in the Senate. I am so proud to be part of this effort to save lives, and together we will make a difference. With that, I'd love to introduce you to Bridget Norring, who is courageous and steadfast in trying to save lives, along the way honoring her son Devin in an amazing way through her work throughout our community. Bridget Norring.
Okay. My family and I want to begin by thanking Senator Klobuchar and Representative Craig for their tireless work battling the illicit fentanyl crisis, part of which requires taking big tech head-on. This came as quite a surprise and an honor to us. In fact, I actually put Congresswoman Craig to voicemail the day she called, and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. But this is our son, Devin. He was just 19 when he died. Like Cooper Davis, he bought a pill unbeknownst to him on Snapchat, and it contained a lethal dose of fentanyl. Devin died at the height of the pandemic. He'd been suffering from migraines and dental pain before lockdown began. He was under doctor's care, and when the medical appointments got canceled, he thought he could turn to Snapchat to make the pain stop. It was after his death we found out Snapchat was where he went, and it's where we found a lot of these teens who have unfortunately been riddled with addiction or lost their lives here in Hastings went and obtained that lethal dose of fentanyl. We know now that social media platforms are the primary place where kids purchase all types of drugs, and that while most of them are not sold as illicit fentanyl, many of them contain it. After Devin died, we were in shock. We never thought this could happen to our family. We had countless conversations with our kid about social media, their social media responsibility. We had conversations about the drugs that are out there, but we didn't know this drug was out there. And we wondered every day for 4 years if there was something we could have done differently. But we've also gotten angrier as every day goes by, because in the years since Devin passed, nothing has changed. Our children and loved ones are still being preyed on by drug dealers in our communities operating on social media platforms, including and especially Snapchat. In 2021, I had the rare opportunity to meet with head executives at Snapchat who were quick to point out that parents like myself and countless others have no recourse because big tech believes it is shielded by Section 230. And Section 230 is so antiquated. I don't think anybody ever expected it to come to this. This is after Snapchat executives boldface lied to our faces and claimed that in 2021 they had no idea that this was happening on their platform. And that as parents, we should have done a better job monitoring our children. Snap also told us that it hired a consultant to implement technology that would identify dealer accounts on the back end before they could reach more kids. And just last month, Rolling Stone uncovered the world learned that while Snap apparently had that technology, it chose not to use its own data. This means that more children, like the family standing next to me, and my son died because Snap chose revenue over available safety features that would have kept millions of children safe. We fully support the Cooper Davis and Devin Noring Act, and we are honored to have our son's name added to this bill, because we have witnessed firsthand that social media companies fail to work cohesively with law enforcement while allowing drug dealers to continue business as usual on their platforms. We have witnessed firsthand the deactivation of accounts, and they wipe them out so that law enforcement loses months, if not years, worth of investigative work. And we have also found in many cases of reporting drug dealers ourselves that these companies ignore their own terms of service in order to keep engagement up by claiming that images of Snapchat dealers and Facebook dealers, Instagram dealers, doesn't violate their terms. Clearly it does when we're showing them the M30 pills. But we should all be angry that these companies are knowingly subjecting our children to harm because it makes them money. And big tech is also spending a lot of money behind the scenes trying to avoid regulation. They think they're untouchable. I can tell you Senator Klobuchar, Representative Angie Craig are on top of them, and they're not as untouchable as they think. They simply say when their products kill another child, we're sorry for your loss, is enough for parents like us. And it's not enough. It will never be enough. We support this bill. We work hard in our community because not one more child should have to die to protect big tech. If you think the parents are fed up, the children are just as fed up, the teens and young adults as well. The time for talking has passed. It's time for action. We need the Cooper Davis Act, COSA, COPPA 2.0, Stop CCM, Minnesota Kids Code. We need these bills passed. And I just want to say a very big thank you to Senator Klobuchar, Representative Angie Craig, Sheriff Lico, Chief Wilski, Mayor Fassbender, all the families standing next to us. Our community has been so amazing. Miss Moss, I know you put on the spot, but she's that one teacher that opened the door up here in our community to get us in, to speak to the kids, to help us educate and hopefully save just one life. I'm greedy, I want to save them all. And that's all I have to say. Thank you. I want to turn it over to Chief Wilski, who has just done amazing work in our community as well.
Good morning. My name is Dave Wilski. I am the Hastings Police Chief. I would like to thank Congresswoman Craig and Senator Klobuchar for bringing this bill forward and for their continued support of law enforcement to assist in finding those responsible for selling illicit drugs through social media platforms. There are several Hastings police officers that still remember responding to the Noring household on April 4th, 2020, the day that Devin lost his life. In fact, some of those officers still communicate with the Noring family on a regular basis. And that just shows that this is impactful for the Noring family and the community as a whole when a tragedy like this takes place. Since that fateful day, we have supported and encouraged Bridget and the Noring family to continue and get the message out about fentanyl and the dangers of social media sales. I'd like to thank Bridget and the Noring family for their continued efforts to make communities aware of the dangers our youth face. The Hastings PD and Dakota County Drug Task Force and Washington County Drug Task Force diligently investigated this case for years and were successful in acquiring federal charges against the man responsible for selling Devon narcotics over the internet. In addition, investigators kept pulling at strings that resulted in a total of 19 federal indictments, 337,582 fentanyl pills, which was a state record, over 211 grams of powder fentanyl, 25 firearms were seized, and over $78,000 in U.S. currency, all from this tragedy. Due to the current constraints with social media, this case would have proven much more difficult and the outcome very uncertain. There's a place for social media, connecting with friends, sharing interesting life events, showing pictures of enormous fish that were caught on the 4th of July, even if you maybe hold it out a little bit too far and to distort the actual size of the fish. However, drug sales have no place on social media. The drug dealers in our communities can be very creative, and they are aware of the vast numbers that can be reached through these sites. Those that deal drugs have found these social media platforms to be effective and efficient way to sell their products, often without repercussions, especially when law enforcement has reduced investigative tools to determine what might have occurred. So why is it so difficult for law enforcement to find those selling illegal drugs on social media sites? In previous years, law enforcement has had some success in locating and prosecuting those dealers. But the trend recently is for sites like Facebook to add encryption to their platform. This effectively protects their users and does not allow law enforcement to retrieve the data, even with a search warrant. Make no mistake about it, the priority of social media platforms is protecting their clients. And this allows dealers to find buyers very easily and often remain anonymous. In addition, it is not uncommon for users of these sites to have numerous aliases, and this is true of dealers as well. This adds additional hurdles during the investigation to identify the author of a social media posting where sales of drugs was the intent. Hastings Police Department has been successful in charging third-degree murder in 3 cases in recent years, but a number of cases are unresolved, and our hope is that this bill will change that. The City of Hastings has experienced 5 drug overdose-related deaths in the last 18 months, and the reality is 1 is too many. It takes several strategies to reduce and eliminate the drug problems in our community. Targeting those that are, education about the dangers of illicit narcotics, targeting those that are distributing and selling illegal drugs, tough prosecution for dealers, and recovery programs that can be made available to those that want to heal. The Hastings PD is committed to using available resources to determine who is responsible for these sales and charging them for their crimes. This bill will assist law enforcement across Minnesota with locating key evidence from those selling on social media and develop enough evidence for charges. This is one piece of the puzzle as we continue to prevent a tragedy like Devon and the Norring family experienced. Thank you.
Very good. Okay. Any questions on this, right? Anything?
Yeah, could you elaborate on the penalties in the bill?
Sure.
Yeah, I mentioned that this would carry with it some penalties. So there are criminal penalties, and in the case of an initial violation, a fine of up to $190,000. In the case of a second or subsequent violation by a social media platform, a fine of up to $380,000. Perhaps as importantly, there are civil penalties. If a provider knowingly submits a report containing false or fraudulent information or omits information required by the bill, then they are liable to the U.S. government for a civil penalty of not less than $50,000 and not more than $100,000 per occurrence. So, look, most of these things are suggestions to social media platforms. This is not a suggestion. This is, Congress needs to take this into their own hands and force these tech platforms to get these drug dealers out of the hands of our young people across our community. And we'll be happy to provide that in writing to you as well, the criminal and civil penalties.
And so I think you all know that I've been taking on tech companies for a long time. As my husband said to our daughter last summer, be nice to your mom this weekend. She's taking on the 4 biggest companies the world has ever known, and she just got banned from Russia. This is not an easy fight. And as Representative Craig said, this is actually penalties, and that's why they're fighting it. And they don't want to have any regulation. I think they think that once you open the door to regulation for things like porn or things like fentanyl, that they're going to get more regulation. And I do think they need rules. These companies started out in a garage, they say. And back then, the U.S. government and the Congress decided, well, and this is what Bridget was referring to, Section 230, we are just going to have no rules at all so that we can have innovation. Good thought. No ability to sue them for anything that happens. Imagine if that happened to any other entity in the U.S., what we would see. That's where we are right now. So there's a complete disconnect with what's happening on real media, where they have rules, and on social media, where it's the Wild West. So what we're trying to do here, bit by bit, is put these rules in place. To me, the quickest way to solve it is to get rid of Section 230, a bill that Senator Graham has long sponsored and that I support. And this simply says they can be sued. And that would create the incentive for these trillion-dollar companies, many of them are trillion-dollar, most of them are billion-dollar companies, billions of dollars, to actually put the people in place so that and change the algorithm so this stuff is not happening and be more transparent. But right now, because we do not have the votes to get rid of Section 230, mostly because of their lobbying, I think that the smartest thing we're doing is what we're doing now. We're moving on kids' issues, gotten a bunch of these bills through Senate committees on a bipartisan basis. I think 2 to 3 times now, Senator Durbin, Cornyn, Senator Grassley and I, you have there the chair of the Judiciary Committee, along with sometimes Senator Hawley and others, have just gone to the Senate floor and asked for unanimous consent for these bills, which means, is anyone going to be brave enough to come forward and object to this idea that you actually aren't going to have fentanyl sold on the internet and you're going to give the law enforcement the tools to take it down? Depending on the bill, people do come forward and object. But we're winnowing down the objections to on the bill I have on porn that has caused kids to commit suicide because they think they're sending a picture of themselves to get a girlfriend or boyfriend. We've had over 20 suicides last year. That's called the SHIELD Act. We're now down to 1 objection, Rand Paul. And so we're trying to move these either as a package where this bill would clearly be part of it, or we're trying to move them one by one on the Senate floor, and then we believe there'll be support in the House as well. So that's been going on now for the last few months, where we've gotten very aggressive about pushing our colleagues now that we've gotten these bills through committee. So this bill, as Congresswoman mentioned, has actual penalties, but mostly what's important to me is that it requires them to give this information to law enforcement. They know what's going on. In the words of the head of our drug enforcement agency, these are her words, not mine, the cartel, they've harnessed it because this is the best place for them to sell their killing drugs without getting caught. That's what's happening right now, and that's what we have to stop, and that's why this bill is so important.
These companies argue that Section 230 protects them. How do you enforce this?
Right, so there are a series of these bills, which are, some of the ones that Bridget mentioned are actual exceptions to Section 230. It makes it very clear.
When do you hope to have this voted on and move forward? What's the timeline looking like?
I'll let Congresswoman Craig talk about the House. In the Senate, like I said, we've been pushing these forward to try to just get it to everyone to agree. So then the House would most likely, because there would be so much pressure, pass it. If that doesn't work, we're running out of time, honestly, of this year. And so there's AI legislation that may be moving that could actually exacerbate this situation with porn and with drugs. And so the hope is we would include these and bring these into an AI bill.
I would just say in the House, obviously, we're going to be pushing this as a standalone bill, but looking for every opportunity to incorporate this into some other bill if we could do it faster. Look, this bill should have been passed yesterday in America. Section 230 should have been repealed yesterday in America to create additional liability and, actually put some guardrails on tech companies. So the Senator and I will be working very closely to see what the best path forward is in the House. And I'll be working really hard to continue to build the list of co-sponsors in the House so that we can have strong support, bipartisan support from both the Senate and the House.